30 years later, part 2. So we're talking about the butterflies. Sol frowned. Do you feed them? I planted the flowers they feed on. I look after them at night, put out nets to stop the bats. In return, they let me study them. Sol had a sudden flash of inspiration. Like a butterfly collector. The woman's open face seemed to snap shut and darken, her eyes suddenly fierce. No, nothing like a butterfly collector. She spat out the words. I do not need to kill beautiful things to understand them. I do not need to trap a wild thing to hang on my wall like a painting. Sol's mouth went dry. I'm sorry, No, interrupted the woman, the clouds rolling back. I'm sorry, It's a common mistake. In truth, there is no word for what I am. Some call others in my line of work lepidopatrists or Aurelians. What's an Aurelian? The word felt graceful on Sol's clumsy tongue. It was fine and shining like golden lace. The woman smiled at the confusion on Sol's face. Just fancy words for butterfly collector, only with more science. But other Aurelians kill the butterflies to study them. I do not. I create living museums for gardens. How? I plant the flowers they like, and sometimes I make netting or glass enclosures to keep them safe and warm. Like a butterfly zookeeper. The woman clapped her hands together. One of them was lumpy with scar tissue, and Sol tried not to stare. Yes, exactly that. I should have to get my sign redone. She jerked her head to the door and Sol noticed a rectangular piece of wood hanging there. It was painted a rich blue with gold careful letters. Amihan Tala, Aurelian. Butterfly Gardens a speciality. Inquiries welcome. I hang it by the main road when the festival trade passes. Most people just come to ask me what it means, but I get enough work. And what do you do? She frowned. Sol frowned. I'm a child. I go to school and do chores. Amihan brushed this response. No. What do you do? I help cook. No, said the woman firmly, but not unkindly. What are you good at? What do you like doing? What are you going to do for the rest of your life? Sol thought hard, wanting to come up with an answer that would please her. A teacher? A secretary? These were perhaps a little ambition, but yet here was this woman in the middle of the forest, living in a house covered in butterflies. It made impossible things feel a little more possible. A butterfly zookeeper. That, said Amihan, leaning forward with a solemn expression, is a very good idea. Sol felt warmth blossom inside her. How did you become one? Said the woman. To understand that, I'd have to begin at the beginning. It's a very long story. Therefore, possibly very boring. I don't see how it can be, said Sol. Aren't you tired? Sol shook her head firmly. Not at all. She wasn't. The air had taken on an almost electrical charge. The thrill of it ran across the hairs of her arms. Tell me, said the woman leaning back in her chair. Have you heard of Kulion? The leper colony? Sol could feel the woman's eyes on her as she spoke. What do you know about it? It's full of lepers. Sol tried not to shudder. Her eyes flickered to the woman's scarred hand. We know that it's not leper. Can you remember what the scarred hand is, though? It's not leprosy. The woman laughed dryly. That is true enough. And what do you think about that? Not much, said Sol. Not much. It's not a nice thing to think about. Why? Because it scares you? Because it's disgusting. It was the woman's turn to flinch. In my experience, Amihan said, disgust is the consequence of fear. Why are you afraid of lepers, Sol? Sol shuddered and thought of the old man who sometimes came begging for alms at the door. Mistress always made them invite him in and give him food, and once Sol had answered the door and his fingerless hand had brushed her. But it seemed a silly answer to give. All the children were afraid of him and said far worse things than Sol. It was just how it was. But she could tell she had angered Amihan. The atmosphere between them had changed. It was like being in the room with a cloud. One moment the woman was soft and pillowy, the next grey and threatening storms. I know what you meant. Amihan was far away now, eyes fixed on the wall above Sol's head. And I have to tell you that kindness is an important part of being a butterfly zookeeper. Do you think what you said was kind? No, said Sol. Her own voice hushed to match the woman's. There was a long silence. Amihan's expression was inscrutable, a mist on a windless day. Sol squirmed. I'm sorry, she said eventually. I was unkind. I'm only sorry you feel disgusted by people who are different, people who are suffering, and who do you no harm other than existing. It was as bad as if Amihan had shouted, and Sol hurried to move the conversation on. Is that how you became an Aralan? Aurelian? Again, Sol let the word drift out like a shimmering breeze. By being kind. No, said the woman, her eyes like coals burning with the last of the fire's light. I got here by luck. And love, of course. That is behind most stories, long or short. Behind most journeys too. And it was a big journey that brought me here. You weren't born here. The woman shook her head. Where were you born then? The woman looked at her, mock serious. Can't you guess? Coulion, Sol gaped to her. But how did you leave? Again, by luck and love, by having them and losing them again. Now, we haven't got much left, guys, but we are going to leave this until next week. I really can't wait to see how this ends. I know that our story is over, but I'm really intrigued to find out more about Amihan 30 years later. I want to know everything that happened in the last 30 years. Right then, we'll pick this up next week. I hope you enjoyed our penultimate section of the island at the end of everything, because next week, it's the end. What a super book this has been.